Hi, everybody. Let's see, make sure I get my camera right. There. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is day 1099. 1099 days, and I'm coming on very late. We are burning the midnight oil. Um, we're burning the midnight oil for the love of our son, who we absolutely believe was murdered in July 23rd, 2020. Absolutely believe that. And so this is burning the midnight oil for getting justice for him, of course. But it's much bigger. It's to expose the dereliction of duty, the criminality, the our institutions working outside of the law, our military being led by 44 four-star generals and admirals that have betrayed us, that are kowtowing to foreign and domestic enemies instead of honoring their oath of office, the uniforms that they wear, the medals that they adorn their uniforms with, the stars that give them so much privilege, that give them security, that give them large offices, big staffs, um, housing, retirement, all kinds of benefits, future jobs, future CEO jobs. Um, this is, and they betray us. And then yet they demand to have everything that we provide for them while they are betraying us and laughing behind our back, laughing how foolish the American people are. Um, we are, they are funding us. It's their dime, and we're doing the work for foreign and domestic enemies. Really, it's diabolical. It's full of malice to do us harm. And through this whole, and I should go to Facebook to make sure that I'm on and everybody can hear me. But, and they're painting a picture of themselves. I'm not painting it. They have done it. And the American people are waking up. Look at that. That's amazing. A picture taken yesterday in Brazil of the moon. Wow. I'm just opening up Facebook and I'm seeing this amazing picture that I cannot ignore. I cannot ignore. Okay. Because we can't forget why we have to stand up, why we can't bow to that hat. I did that McGuffey's lesson for William Tell. Well, where William Tell would not bow to the hat of the Austrian leadership, and for that they retaliated against him, of course, attacking his family, taking his son, putting an apple on his son's head, and making him shoot an arrow at his son. And that story is very famous. And so he defended Switzerland, the authority of Switzerland over Austria. It's a tale. We don't know. There's a lot of information about that legend, and I just think it is like Pilgrim's Progress. It tells us that what we're up against and what doing the right thing will bring us. It's so worth it because participating in the Vanity Fair pollutes our everything, including our children. And that's why we have a huge problem with pedophilia today, with the drug issues, with the health issues, with the relationship issues with our children. And it's because of, I believe, not standing up against the perpetrators, not doing the right thing. So Richard stood up. He learned those lessons of William Tell from homeschooling, and he stood up to the criminality within Fort Bliss, within his unit in the El Paso area, the what was going on there, and he was retaliated against clearly. When you are making reports to CPS and the CPS has infiltrators, when you're making reports to CID and the CID has infiltrators, conflicts of interest everywhere, and that the director of emergency services, the chief of security, it's like a dual hat, I guess, chief of security there for Fort Bliss is participating in the Vanity Fair and then declares it in a letter that we just posted. Declares how it intentionally is interfering with our son's case. And I think this is huge. And we discussed if we should share the letter publicly to everybody. And because it seems like everybody's impotent because they're too busy listening to these 44 four-star generals. They're so afraid, you see. They're afraid for their to lose their position, to lose their retirement. And so they want to listen to these 44 four-star generals who have betrayed us, that are working, servicing foreign and domestic enemies, and others, even others within our government, within our parties, within our Congress, and they don't want to be retaliated against. Look at our key witness. People that are paying attention, they watch this and they're like, wow, a person in authority, an officer of the court is doing the right thing, and they are trying to retaliate against a key witness in a missing soldier's case. This is a Guillen situation, y'all. It's very clear from the beginning that something was so stinky that now we know that with Richard's murder and dismemberment and body parts, partial remains being found, fragmented remains being found, them hiding it, us getting information about them hiding it. I'm still not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's very clear that this is a Guillen situation. And so thank you. Thank you, Anicia. Never giving up. We're not. And Anicia could tell you from the beginning the distance that we have gone as far as exposing one thing after the other. We never in our wildest dreams believed this was a Guillen situation. But now we look back after finding out one thing after the other, exposing one thing after the other. The first things that we were doing was just to address the smear campaign that was launched on Richard and debunking them, debunking it. This attempt to label him as a suicide, we debunked that because of the hospital stay that he had clearly was a wound of defense, not any self inflicted wound, but a wound of defense. Um, and that was very clear. We debunked First Sergeant Jay Pollin's claims, um, not with us assuming anything, but with medical records. And we debunked the border incident. Because Richard um, volunteered, self-reported that he needed to make a U-turn, that he was in the wrong place. We started by going to those locations, going to the Bridge of Americas, seeing the construction pattern. We had other Team Find Richard Halliday members going and driving that along with us and confirming that it was a traffic pattern that was very difficult. We talked to that led to the Bridge of Americas that would lead you to the border. We talked to the construction foreman there that said even trucks, semis would be caught at the border having to make a U-turn. They would have to stop traffic. Traffic would be backed up. This was a regular events happening every day during that construction. Um, so we also, with the CID, with the timestamps, there was absolutely no way that Richard ever crossed the border into Mexico on that day, that he was so heavily retaliated for that even Captain David Park, I mean, we had to debunk everything. Clearly, everything is debunked on many, many levels, even with the hospital report because they put him in a quarantine wagon. Now, the other reports that we were lied to about his car, we believe that's a lie now. We believe that they have his personal items, that they confiscated them and didn't tell us. We believe that now. This is an accusation, and we're alleging this because of the information that we have collected over these 1,070 days, right? 73 days or 63 days. And so we now have a letter that is just a wowzer that we have come into possession of by the DES, the Director of Emergency Services. Um, and I think he even came to the meeting. I'm going to look at Rob's journal. Things have been so crazy. And we have witness testimony of things that he revealed during conversations, and that his accusations here that uh, in this letter that we posted, that Fort Bliss is working outside of the law, is retaliatory, and I think it is backs up everything that or declares. I mean, it's just another jump forward, and it is. Remember, I said we're in the big leagues, and so it's going to go higher and higher up. This is the Director of Emergency Services, okay? Is the Chief of Security of Fort Bliss. This is someone that is totally in control of the surveillance footage. So this is, um, accusing Major General Eisenhower of retaliatory, illegal crimes, really. That's what this is, because he is obstructing justice in Richard Halliday's case. And so he needs to, um, I don't know what he's going to do. I don't know what he's going to do. What would you do if you were a two-star general in charge of the commanding general of Fort Bliss, and you have the director of emergency services um, that has been there for 15 years, right after he retires? And that's why we can share this letter, okay? The reason why we can share this letter is he did not write it while he was the director of emergency services, okay? Um, and I have to say, I just saw an error here that I must have wrote department, and I should have wrote director. I don't know if it matters, but I am going to correct it. So Thomas Kane is in this neck deep because he did have the access to all the surveillance footage and even to the hidden surveillance footage. Y'all, they have a lot of cameras on Fort Bliss. This is a very important military installation, and they said they had no footage. Okay, and then we had to beg and beg for footage, um, and then they said they'll look at a little bit, a few hours. Come on, this is a missing soldier that absolutely, in their eyes, they knew who he was. We didn't know that he was a whistleblower, right? We did not know that Leilani Hart was in control of, you know, persuading or whatever the sex cult was doing to the CID, to the DES, the Director of Emergency Services, to the JAG, to the command, to, we didn't know this stuff was going on, but we did know that there were leaks. And at the meeting, we told them there are leaks coming out of CID. We knew this early on. Not knowing about Leilani Hart, not knowing about First Lieutenant Dallas Hart, not knowing about Tavita Nusa, not knowing about Thomas Kane, not knowing about Clem Coward, not knowing about so many. I'm missing so many because you see the relationships are so many in this that it even includes CPS. It even includes I'm thinking if I should say what I want to say. Maybe I should hold off until Monday because other things are going to be revealed Monday. Okay? We're going to this letter is just the tip of the iceberg. And we have been accused, well, we have been bullied that we don't have hard evidence, that we don't have hard facts, and we have so much. But the fact is that our son is the Vanessa Guillen first absent soldier. Underneath that Vanessa Guillen absent soldier flowchart, right? That new one. He's the CONUS Dust 1 missing soldier, the very first one. Her remains brutally battered and burnt and cut up and whatnot, what they did to it, what they did to her, um, were found at the beginning of July. Well, they were found at the very end of June, but declared at the beginning of July. And then Richard goes missing July 23rd. And nothing goes swiftly with our government. And so when Richard went missing, things were just getting going on. I mean, everything was in chaos because of the Guillen situation. Well, Richard is another Guillen situation. And what their response was, okay, we're going to hide this. We're going to hide this. 2 Guillen situations, boom, boom. We're going to hide this. We're going to, they say they want to protect the institution. No, they want to protect their retirement. They want to protect their future CEO jobs. They want to protect their jobs. They want to protect their privileges. That's what they want to protect. And if that means disregarding a human life, the rule of law, retaliation, a wave of retaliation in Richard Halliday's case, they'll do it. They did it. They are doing it. If that means putting people in danger, they'll do it. They did it. They're doing it. And this letter is because I don't think it declares the innocence of Thomas Kane. You have to understand, we're at 1,099 days. We've come a long way. He could have come forward at the very beginning, at the meeting with Lieutenant General Donna Martin in civilian clothing, sitting in the middle of the room in Indian style, saying, "Oh, I want to hear about Richard," while behind our back, they knew that Richard was a whistleblower and that they were having to cover up the Guillen situation times 2. The Guillen situation and Richard Halliday's situation of being brutally murdered, protecting the criminal syndicate there. They had to get rid of him and dismembering him. You know, you didn't want to find his remains, so they disseminated it. What a horrible, for what? To protect the pedophilia, to protect the child pornography, to protect the contract deals, to protect certain people in high levels, to protect the equipment smuggling, the gun sales, the weapons sales, the very organized and orchestrated criminal syndicate. Because it had to have been going on for a long time, and it has to be at a very high level, because you're talking about major agencies that are working outside of the law. And here we have it. It all is starting to come unraveled. And we can see it clearly by Thomas Kane. And this needed to get out because by himself, like, we wrote him a letter the beginning of June, okay? June 9th, specifically June 9th. We wrote him a letter. And every one of our letters is a pleading for them to do the right thing. We have written so many letters to so many pleading. And I'm still getting people writing me saying, have you contacted Texas EquiSearch? Yeah. It's a repeat. Have you done this? Have you done this? We have. We have. And I thank you so much for staying in tune. And every time I get a message like that, I thank God. I don't get frustrated. I thank God. Because people know that we as taxpayers should get something for our tax money. And we're not. We're not. So we have to resort to a privately funded group, Texas EquiSearch, a Christian group, Texas EquiSearch, to get help. That tells you something. People understand that we're getting took. That CPS is in trouble. That the security of Fort Bliss is in trouble. That the generals, well, with generals like this, who needs enemies? Who needs enemies? That the DA is like a Pontius Pilate. I'm going to wash my hands of this and say this has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with Fort Bliss. I'll let Fort Bliss handle it, which is a lie. The AG, same way. And, so we have to, I'm still getting messages. Have you contacted Texas EquiSearch? So people understand that Texas EquiSearch, this is a commercial, a plug for Texas EquiSearch. That the people of Texas know that they need to go to Texas EquiSearch to get help. So if you want to know who to donate to, you need to donate to Texas EquiSearch. Because people don't say, oh, did you go and talk to Major General Eisenhower to get help? Because they know that they're working outside of the law, that our most valuable assets, our volunteer sons and daughters, are getting suicided, are getting overdosed, are getting murdered by accidents that are just unbelievable. And I understand there are accidents, that they are getting sent to unjust wars, that they're getting raped, that they're getting groomed into pedophilia, they're getting groomed into these sex cults, these doggy sex cults, that they want to rear puppies. Those aren't my words. Those are a colonel's words. A colonel in the sex cult. And they want us to pay for all of this. And guess what? We are. It's on our dime. The sex cults, the turning our most valuable assets into drug dealers and drug addicts, and let's bring in the girls and have frat parties every day, and all the and no discipline, no reality. No reality. It is such a matrix. The whole military or government institutions are a matrix. And we saw that during COVID. We saw that during that stage task force find Richard Halliday. It was insanity. I kept saying it over and over to them. This is insanity. There is no connection with reality. No connection. And this is what's hurting us to find Richard, because something stinks really bad here. There's leaks coming out of the CID. You have Richard's first sergeant writing insane things. Not what a first sergeant would do. You have the other first sergeant, because they've replaced, retired. You want to get retired quickly, or you want to get replaced quickly, you just come into contact or try to help Richard Halliday, and it's that's it. Become a whistleblower for Richard Halliday, become a witness for Richard Halliday, and you're like moved out. And Robert Shook, the judge, the illegal search in our house, the lying to us about the warrants, the type of warrants, the number of warrants, the using of a manipulated picture to give to the International Interpol, the FBI employee that declares that the FBI was indeed in Mexico looking for the remains of Richard and found him, and he's dead, his remains. And we called the State Department. We have it on record. He confirmed that the FBI was looking for Richard's remains in Mexico, and then receiving the autopsies that they will not confirm or deny. And if I was Dr. Raskin Ortez, I would really love for you to send us a letter. Send us a letter. Send us a text message to 941-677-0060. Confirm or deny that you conducted or knew about autopsies on the remains of our son, Richard Halliday. This letter, and you can read it, accuses the commanding general of Fort Bliss of working outside of the law, being retaliatory, illegally interfering with the investigation of Richard Halliday, PFC Richard Halliday. The disappearance, the investigation into the disappearance of PFC Richard Halliday. This is not just anybody. This is the director of emergency services. This is serious. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. We have been working with the system for so long now, 1,063 days. We have been trying to work with the system. And, our greatest strength is you, the people, the watchers, the sharers, the ones that talk about Richard, the media, the true media. That's why during COVID, they wanted to manipulate the election, and they had to lock you in so you wouldn't talk about it. It's the same SOP. You cannot go to the pub. You cannot Go and work out and talk, go for walks with people, be 6 feet within each other, and talk about what is going on in the world today and work it out. Work it out, discuss it. They wanted your mind to be focused on fear, on some kind of made up, viruses. I'm sorry, viruses are all made up. A true exosome or a virus is not living. It's not a living thing. So that whole thing, and that's been proven, and they're still trying to push this narrative to make people afraid. But we spent hours and hours trying to look things up, make sure what we were saying was true, because all the mandates were interfering in the investigation into our son's disappearance. And we just didn't have time for it ourselves and risked everything, and then we're fine. We're fine. And people that were so afraid that went to all the lengths to not get sick, got sick. Very ill. And here, you have another interference, another level of interference. This is absolutely political, and I want to show you something. And you have to, I put this on here. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to show you the letter too. Play this because it just shows you that there is a departure from reality, right? There's a departure. In our institutions, you had zero risk of dying for our military, and yet they were insane with their mandates for this fraud, waste, and abuse. They're always talking about fraud, waste, and abuse, and here they are, the greatest perpetrators. These 44 four-star generals and admirals are the greatest perpetrators of fraud, waste, and abuse. And I'm going to tell you that Tom Kane admitted to that too, fraud, waste, and abuse. And they perpetrated just this whole false narrative around Richard, that he was some kind of Al Capone dealing with whatever. And I'm like, okay, where's the fancy car? That's not there. Where's any kind of fancy anything? That's not there. That's not there. Where are the bank accounts? It's not there. Where is any proof? It's not there. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. He looks so clean. He's so clean. He's my saint. That's why I made the the saint icon of him because I was so overwhelmed with how remarkable Richard stood up to the assault on the minds and the bodies of our most valuable assets within the military, hearing about everything going on. I was just like, wow, Richard, you did so great. You did so great. And he even, in all of that, because people are watching, you have an officer of the court doing the right thing, making a CID complaint, making an FBI complaint, writing the complaint to Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, who was the commanding general of Fort Bliss at the time, right? The beginning January of 2022. And look at what they, wow, right? And so they do that to him. Look at what they did to Richard. And people watch this and they're like, well, I'm shaking. I don't, it's between you and Bliss. It's between you and Bliss. Remember the paralegal? He's just like, I don't know where, just leave me alone. He's just going crazy because he's fearing retaliation from his own, right? Because he knows, because he's a paralegal, that they're working outside of the law, that they're criminal, that they resort to retaliation. And now, so we have the paralegal totally giving indication of that. Totally, I walked away with, wow, they're so scared. They're so scared. Immediately, you hear it in that video that I took of that event. And then now you have the director of emergency services also in fear. And when you reach that kind of fear, it turns into an anger. And so it's like, why is First Sergeant Jay Paulin so angry? Why is this paralegal so angry? Why are these people so angry? Because it's fear. It's fear. They've been brought into a situation where they're being tested. And they absolutely have they either don't want to be retaliated against, because you can be innocent and be retaliated against. You could be the whistleblower and be retaliated against. Or you could have participated and tried to, play the law thing, and of course, hence the letter. But I'm going to tell you, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that people don't know. And the letter absolutely implicates the commanding general of Fort Bliss of acting in a retaliatory fashion, also putting us in danger. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. But you see, everything is making sense now. And it all comes back to a cover-up of the murder of Richard Halliday, using many different agencies to do it, 15 plus agencies, to hide and cover up the murder, the brutal murder of a whistleblower, a soldier. It's very clear. And Leilani Hart's in the center of all of this. Okay? Leilani Hart, and I'm sure her husband James Hart needs to be, there's all a connection there. And of course, First Lieutenant Dallas Hart, because um, see, James Hart works on Fort Bliss, right? Doesn't he work on Fort Bliss? Doesn't he work with? I mean, they had the child care. They had anyway, and if you go on to Fort Bliss, you have to get a pass. And if Lolani Hart is having an affair with Tavita Nusa, who's married to another individual, and he's a special agent in the CID, and she's friends with that office, and she's also then at, from Park University, friends with the director of emergency services and has connections in that. And she's also has connections with Clem Coward, the Major General, the Commanding General of 32nd ADCOM, Richard's command at the time. And then she has connections within the JAG. Why is it that she still has her pass when she's up to no good in all of these different offices, right? Manipulating, doing things. Well, and then not to, forget that she puts in a CID complaint that she has notarized on the 22nd of July 2020, the day before Richard goes missing, that confesses that she had a 7-year-old being sexually assaulted in her master bedroom by several members of her household. She waited almost 2 years to confess that. How many times did it happen? And that she had child pornography in her home continuously. And she confesses that her son, Dallas Hart, who at the time was a first lieutenant right there at Fort Bliss with Richard, is engaged in incestual relationships. What, why is it that there's not an investigation into all of those different connections? What power is there? What common denominator is there in all of this that allows for her to have, because she was creating a lot of trouble at Park University, okay? That I think they barred her from going into those buildings, being around Park University, because Park University is on Fort Bliss, I believe. They have a small campus off of Fort Bliss, but I think their main building is there, or facility is there on Fort Bliss. And they barred her from being anywhere near Park University because she ruined at least one life that I'm aware of. So what is this common denominator behind? What is going on? It's like, does she have dirt on all these people? What's going on? And why did she, Richard's reporting, what did Richard report about her? What did Richard report about First Lieutenant Dallas Hart? That she feels she has to, maybe she has to distance herself from the child pornography, from her son that's in an incestuous relationship. What's going on that she has to distance herself from, a child being sexually assaulted in her master bedroom, that she has to confess these things. Why isn't Fort Bliss talking about this? Why isn't El Paso talking about this? Do we want to cover up, or do we want to say God's children are not for sale? Our country is not for sale. What our institutions are not for sale. Our volunteer sons and daughters are not your playthings. I don't understand why Fort Bliss um, is meddling in this to protect this situation. How deep are they with the 85,000 unaccounted for minors? How deep are they with the pedophilia? How deep are they with the child porn? How deep are they with the illegal arms sales or gun smuggling, or how deep are they with the contracts, the building contracts and stuff? How deep are they with this investment LLC? How deep are they with all of this, that the whole of Fort Bliss is huge, and that it would scare a two-star general so bad, or they would bring in special chosen generals to that have agreed that they're going to cover this up, that they're going to cover up the whistleblower that didn't want to play with the Vanity Fair. They're going to cover up the retaliation. They're going to cleanse his file, right? They're going to sanitize his file and promote him 2 times after they have covered up the continuous severe retaliation he suffered before he was brutally tortured, murdered, and dismembered, and then his remains not even given to his family. So this is what Sean Bernabe was sent there to cover up and get a star for? Is that what was happening there? Because let me tell you, he didn't get in trouble for the 11 soldiers that were drinking out of a sealet that ended up in the hospital. A lot of them ended up in the hospital with antifreeze poisoning. That you don't recover from that real good, because this sealet was supposed to be a grog, and they were in the field, and they never released the ages of these soldiers because so many of them, I'm sure, had not reached the age of 21 yet. He didn't get in trouble for Asia Graham. Asia Graham being raped, her being a whistleblower for her rape, and then her ending up dead in the barracks, propped up against the wall. He didn't get in trouble for that. He wasn't held accountable for that. And now we have all this other stuff going on over and over. Where is the accountability for our generals? Why? There must be so much lawlessness that the 44 4-star generals are willing to tolerate or put in place generals to perpetuate the lawlessness. Because that's exactly what they're doing. What is obstruction of justice? What is denying due process? What is all the other cases that are showing up? A 14-year-old girl living in the barracks. Who is this Richard Walsh? Because you know what? I'm at the point where I would really like to hear his story, because the retaliation is so crazy. I wonder if this was a setup job. Because I know some things about this young girl and who she belonged to. And this is why we are put in danger, because we are so out there. People send us information. And they know that most of the time, I'm not going to be silent about it because I don't want um, Richard Huberte Carlos Walsh to be falsely accused when something else is going on. But the point of that is that the responses to that crime were, oh, that happens all the time. There's people living in the barracks all the time. There's frat parties going on. Oh, there's young girls got, it's such, you can tell that there's such lawlessness in the barracks and on Fort Bliss that people are not even shocked by it anymore. That's the point. Which is so bad for really the morale. You don't have to be sad. You can be like, oh, yeah, whatever. It happens all the time. But in reality, let's have a reality check. That's a national security threat. It's a national security threat that the director of emergency services is not loyal. Not loyal to his family, not loyal to Fort Bliss, not loyal to the soldiers, not loyal to his oath. And then he wants his retirement. I deserve it. I worked. Wait a minute. Who did you really work for? What hat did you bow to? What did you do on the American dime? What did you do on the American dime? And I appreciate letting Major General Eisenhower know that he is working outside of the law. But there's more to the story, right? Just like with Richard Humberto Carlos Walsh, there's more to the story. And we don't have a media that is doing their job. We don't have a PAO that's doing their job. And, then we get retaliated because they have dragged our son's case on so long that now we have gotten all this other information from other cases and from the inner workings of Fort Bliss. Now we're in the big leagues where before we were just, please just, can you tell us what happened to our son and give us our son? Are you ready to hear about your son? They are like, are you ready to go into the matrix to accept the narrative that we want to give you? No, we want reality. We want reality, not insanity. We want to truly hear about our son. And so it has taken us so long, and I'm sure that there are parts and pieces in there that might be not in the right place that they can straighten out for us. But even in that distorted puzzle, we know that Richard absolutely whistleblower, retaliated, murdered, and his remains hidden from us. Hidden from us, meaning the American people. Because not only is Richard our son, and we have our invested love in him, our invested duty in him, but he is an American soldier. He belongs to the people of these United States. And what happens to him matters to everybody. Because if we don't care about our service members, then we're saying we don't care about our defense. And our defense can be can be rotten, it can be criminal, and we don't care. And even though we're paying for it. And so when we do, in reality, are attacked and they are not prepared and we fall to the enemy, then we need to know why. Because all we're getting is $1 million efforts in a narrative in movies or commercials, be all you can be, or whatever, and those are failures because they're so woke. But, you know, that's what we're getting, this false narrative. I get, and I maybe it's I'm like, okay, whatever. Let me see what he wants to lie to us about, right? It's a twisted lie. And I'm not saying that our military doesn't have good people. They're being so abused. I can say that right now with surety. And they're not allowed to be all that they can be. And our leadership sees to it. They don't have the equipment they should. They don't have the training they should. They don't have the esprit de corps. They don't have the Medal of Honor ethos. They don't have the discipline. There's no discipline because the agenda is not that. And I think that every service member who cares about that should express that. And I think there's a lot of them. I'm getting a lot. And so this is more than just Richard, but absolutely about Richard. He did a remarkable thing, and we have to fight for justice for him. And we have to get his remains. And I think we've almost cleared his name. And why do I say that? Because they had to scrub his file. They had to sanitize it and then promote him twice. So I think that his character has been just about cleared of all of the smear campaigns that they put against him. And who did that? Who put forth the smear campaigns? It was the law enforcement agencies. They're the ones that perpetrated the smear campaign from the command. From the command. And from their connections, from their conflicts of interest. The keyboard warriors that these agencies employ, which is really dirty. It's so ugly. Yeah. Okay. You can see Never Giving Up. You can see it in the video, in my opinion, not very courteous of that individual, in my opinion. Even the PI, yes, the PI seemed to not be working to look for Richard, in my opinion. God's children are not for sale. No, the PI was absolutely, in my opinion, and Rob's opinion, and many in Team Find Richard, I think all in Team Find Richard Halliday. I haven't heard any naysayers. Absolutely believe that the PI was compromised. That was a set-up job by Sergeant Major Hardy Hay. That was asymmetric warfare tactics. That was TRADOC. That was military operations. Um, and you know that our media is uh, is controlled also because they use our military. They can do their business plans and they know that the American people will pay that they will pay for it. So they use the military. And it's a big criminal syndicate, y'all. And Richard called it out. I don't know to what extent we're finding it out. We're finding it out. Okay, thank you, everyone. I know this is really late tonight. Um, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on and, getting us through this. Every day is new information. So thank you. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing.